Keep piling up. The NBC Chicago investigative team just uncovered some new details tied to the Nolan Wells death case.
With no resolution to what happened, his family and national civil rights leaders have raised questions of a racially motivated killing. And then, as NBC Chicago's investigative team reported last week, a man living in this west suburban Berwyn apartment was arrested for allegedly making death threats to witnesses in the case, to kill them, anyone in their homes, and any cops. Porter is also accused by federal prosecutors of threatening to cut up one witness and stuff the remains into a suitcase.
A federal arrest has now pushed the Nolan Wells case into a whole new level of tension. A 33-year-old man from suburban Chicago is facing federal charges after investigators say he made threats against people connected to the case. And these weren't just angry words thrown around online. According to the allegations, the threats included plans to kill witnesses, their family members, and even police officers. And one allegation is especially disturbing. Prosecutors say Edward James Porter threatened to cut up one person and put the remains into a suitcase. But here's the part you need to understand. Porter is not accused of killing Nolan Wells. His arrest is tied to alleged threats against people connected to the investigation. And that raises a question that is becoming harder to ignore. How did the unexplained death of an 18-year-old on Horn Island turn into a case where people are now allegedly threatening witnesses and their families? Because Nolan's death still hasn't been fully explained. The questions are still there. The arguments are still raging. And now, someone has been taken into federal custody. So what exactly happened? And why did this case get to this point? Tonight, we're going through it. So who exactly is Edward James Porter? Because when you first hear his name in connection with the Nolan Wells case, there's something that immediately stands out. Porter wasn't one of Nolan's friends. He wasn't on that island with Nolan. He wasn't part of the group whose actions have been picked apart online since Nolan's death. And according to the reporting in this case, he had no known connection to Nolan Wells or to Mississippi. Porter is 33 years old and was living in Berwyn, Illinois, just outside Chicago. So why would a man living hundreds of miles away suddenly become involved in one of the most controversial death investigations in Mississippi? That's where the story takes a very different turn. Because investigators aren't saying Porter simply watched the case, got angry, and made a few comments online. They're alleging that his involvement became much more direct. Federal investigators say they traced threatening communications back to Porter. Phone calls, digital records, IP addresses, connections that allegedly led investigators back to the Berwyn apartment where he was living. And once investigators believed they had identified the person behind those threats, this wasn't just an internet argument anymore. Federal agents got involved. Berwyn police assisted. And eventually, Porter was arrested. Think about how quickly that changes the situation. A case that began with an 18-year-old found dead in the water now has federal investigators tracing alleged threats across state lines. And the person accused of making those threats wasn't even part of Nolan's original circle.
He was an outsider.
A man in another state who, according to the reporting, had no known personal connection to Nolan. So again, the question is unavoidable. Why did Edward James Porter become so involved in this case? And more importantly, what exactly did investigators say he threatened to do? And then, investigators came to the apartment. Federal agents arrived with Berwyn police, including members of the Chicago FBI Field Office Apprehension Team. The man they were looking for was Edward James Porter. And according to the police records described in the report, Porter didn't fight them. No dramatic standoff. No chase through the neighborhood. He was taken into custody. But the allegations investigators say led them there anything but ordinary.
When Porter was arrested 11 days ago, Berwyn police accompanied federal agents with the Chicago FBI Field Office Apprehension Team. According to Berwyn police records that NBC5 investigates obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, Porter did not put up a fight. He's due at a Gulfport, Mississippi courtroom on September 3rd. That'll be the first time he's seen down there.
So strange that he even got involved in this case.
At some point, we'll figure that out. It'll come out in court or in the charges against him.
Okay, the numbers, their information, all that. That's
makes no sense.
Totally.
Sense.
Yeah. No sense.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Federal prosecutors aren't accusing Porter of simply getting angry about the Nolan Wells case. They're alleging threats against people connected to the investigation, witnesses, their relatives, and even police officers. And then there's one allegation that takes this to another level. Prosecutors say Porter threatened to cut up one of the witnesses and put the remains into a suitcase.
Think about that.
This is a case where people have already spent weeks arguing over what happened to Nolan. People are questioning the timeline. They're questioning the people who were with him. They're questioning what witnesses saw, what they heard, and what happened on those boats. And now, according to federal prosecutors, someone allegedly decided that the way to respond was with threats of violence. That's what makes this arrest so disturbing. Because the people at the center of the Nolan Wells investigation aren't just names on a screen. They're real people. They have families. They have homes. And according to the allegations, someone was threatening to bring that violence directly to them. But there's another part of Edward Porter's story that investigators uncovered. And once you see his history, the federal allegations start to look even more serious. But Edward James Porter's story didn't begin with the Nolan Wells case. According to the NBC Chicago report, his criminal history stretches back to 2011.
Now, NBC5 Investigates uncovers the first photo of Edward Porter. This picture is from the Cook County Jail in 2025. But records we've obtained show Porter's criminal history began years earlier, in 2011, with 24 arrests to follow for domestic violence, breaking court orders of protection, and theft. A city and suburban drifter with no known ties to Nolan Wells or Mississippi. Porter had an Illinois firearm owner card and a handgun that were taken from him when police say he threatened his ex-girlfriend, quote, "I'm going to shoot you." Charges later dropped when she stood down, and it's not known whether the FOID card and gun were returned to Porter. But now, after numerous gun violence, assault, and threat charges by Chicago authorities, most later dropped because the victim wouldn't testify, Porter is facing his first federal charges, accused of inserting himself for unstated reasons into this death mystery in Mississippi. The case against him, according to U.S. investigators, has a trail of cell phone calls from Porter to Mississippi witnesses and IP addresses, all linking back to him and this Berwyn apartment where he was living.
And over the years, authorities encountered him in a series of cases involving allegations of domestic violence, violations of protection orders, theft, assault, gun-related incidents, and threats.
In this unresolved case. Now our investigative reporter Chuck Gowdy in studio revealing that Berwyn man's violent history and has the first photos of this accused threat maker. Chuck.
You do, Allison. Stephan. The Berwyn man's name is Edward James Porter, now facing federal charges in the Nolan Wells case for allegedly threatening to murder witnesses and their family members. 33-year-old Porter is being transferred by U.S. Marshals to the courthouse down in Mississippi. Our investigation of Porter's past finds a Metro Chicago man repeatedly described by authorities as a threat to safety because of his numerous arrests for violence and saying he was going to shoot people.
And this is where we have to be precise. An arrest is not a conviction. A person can be arrested and never found guilty. And the report says several of Porter's previous cases were later dropped, including cases where victims ultimately did not testify. So those old arrests don't prove that Porter committed the new allegations in the Nolan Wells case. But they do provide investigators with a history to examine. A history that includes allegations of violence. A history that includes alleged threats. And now, federal prosecutors say Porter is facing a new set of accusations involving threats against people connected to Nolan's case. That's the part that matters now. Because his past doesn't answer the biggest question. It doesn't tell us why he allegedly became involved with Nolan Wells. It doesn't explain why witnesses were allegedly targeted. And it doesn't tell us what caused an Illinois man, with no known connection to Nolan or Horn Island, to allegedly insert himself into this investigation. That's the question that keeps coming back. Why Nolan? Why these people? And why did the alleged threats become serious enough for federal agents to get involved? And this is where the Nolan Wells case gets even more complicated. Because while investigators were working to understand what happened to Nolan, the people who were with him became targets of intense public scrutiny. Online, people started pulling apart everything.
This is the stuff that I be talking about. All right, let's get to some haters real quick because I want to put these people on blast so you guys can see the energy that I'm getting as it relates to, it's the random folks line as it relates to my coverage of Nolan Wells. I want to put this in perspective real quick. I saw the case like everybody else. I've seen the playbook 100,000 times of jumping to racism when race is not even apparent or there's no evidence of race. And then I'm watching it would appear to be innocent people being accused with no evidence. But hey, that's not I don't know these people. I reached out to Benjamin Crump. Hey, Benjamin Crump, what can you tell my audience? What do you know? Because what it looks like to us is that there's no racism. There's no impropriety yet. They don't respond. The other side responds, hey, we would like to do an interview with you. They vetted me. We interviewed. I interviewed the kids. I put the interview out. People didn't even have to mention my name. I'm not a part of the interview. You can just listen to what the boy told me after I asked him questions. Make your judgment. But instead, I get so much hate and people saying I hate my own people and threatening to kill me because I interviewed white boys that they said knew what happened to Nolan, killed Nolan. Here's some of the people that's ridiculously lying about the whole thing. Wrote a clip.
Did you catch this in Random Tatum's interview? About anything else that was mentioned, thousands of lies, and now, the audio comes back, and all of a sudden we can hear Nolan yelling in the background, screaming, we're screaming about how he's dead. That's just a complete lie, and it's another lie. Release the audio of the staged video then. Release it. That's a big slip up. It's a big mistake to say those words when you were actually there.
We have the video. We played the video. The reason we don't play audio is because some people are saying things and they're not involved. And some of the things that they're saying is maybe embarrassing to them and they're not involved in this. But Nolan is not on any of these boats that's in the video. To protect other people's privacy that have nothing to do with this case. That's the only reason why we haven't put the video out and played the audio, because other people's voices are in it. People are talking in the background, and it's not reasonable. Look at this bald head heifer. Roll the clip.
Officer Tatum, I don't with you. And you know that. I don't know why you even like my post. Did you think that I was coinciding with you? You gotta be out your rabbit coon mind. Let me explain something to you. The only reason why I use your screenshot is because you say it's always two sides to a story. The side that you on is Casper the Ghost, and you ain't over here with Aunt your mama. Let me break it down to your mother. Casper the Ghost is white and Aunt your mama is black. Let's talk about it. You want so bad to make these white boys to be innocent, but what about that black boy named Nolan Wells?
Time out. I honestly believe that the white boys, in my opinion, the white boys and their family, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, I almost feel like they want justice for Nolan more than anybody else. They the ones putting themselves in jeopardy to do an interview, to tell what they know and what they don't know about what happened to Nolan. All right. All right. This bald head fool said this, but she used my content and she was bashing people because they were mad at her. And she used my stuff, and the only reason she made this video, put her bald head self back on here. The only reason she made this video is because she was getting backlash from black people, and she couldn't handle it. This fool went and took my picture and put it up there and mentioned that people cannot compartmentalize, and there's no evidence of a crime in this Nolan Wells case, which is consistent with what I'm saying. But then she get backlash and want to do this. This why y'all ain't ever gonna be nothing. All right, continue. Not her. Do the next clip.
The black community knows when it comes to the king of the this is the final boss. This wears a super cape for white folks. And listen, let's not get it misconstrued. I'm all for holding the black community accountable. I think everybody should be held accountable, regardless of race. And if you know anything about this podcast, the history of this podcast, I've always held my own people accountable. But what I won't do is just make it seem like what he's doing, which is he only holds black people accountable. Everything you do is about black.
I want y'all to go after this video and look at my social media and look at all of my social media. These people are so deranged. It's crazy to me. What happens is when you are a community of people that want no accountability, when someone mentions accountability for you, you flip out and you make it all about you. If you look at my social media, I hold everybody accountable. When you cutting up, you cutting up. White police officers, black police officers. White politicians, black politicians. Democrats, Republicans, I call everybody out. And to be this stupid and to be a grown man to say that I only call out black people is crazy. The difference is when I call out a white person doing something wrong, I feel like white people generally, hey, we don't claim that person. Black people, a man can kill 400 black people and a white cop kill him in a justified shooting. Black people mad at you. I wrote a whole book about police incidents where I criticize police and I criticize suspects. And these ignorant Negroes can't help themselves but say, all they do is talk about, I wish we could pull up my Instagram. I know we can't. We won't run out of time to do it. Scroll down my Instagram. Hold on. Is there a way to pull up my Instagram up and scroll it? Probably not. Let me keep talking and then we can try to stand by. I just want y'all to see the perspective of what's going on. Like, on YouTube, we're covering the Nolan Wells case, so most of it is about Nolan Wells. But the general rule of thumb of what I do on social media, and I'm going to let y'all be the judge when we scroll the Instagram, and you tell me, out of all the breaking news clips, do you see it just being holding black people accountable? God of mercy. But roll the clip.
Shame. Is some of it warranted? Absolutely. But both sides. I don't know what it is about white pussy that make you forget who you are. And I'm not against interracial love. Love and loyalty is hard to find. So wherever you find it, love it, embrace it, do your thing. But not at the expense of you kicking the shins out of black people and pulling the rug from under us.
But the black people I do support, they blind to it. All the black Republicans that I campaign for, that I support, that I endorse, that I celebrate, they hate them. So those black people don't count. All of the black men that I post about that do incredible things, all the other black conservatives that follow me, that we share each other's content, they don't count. They not black. They don't count. If I support them, I love them, I elevate them, they don't count. These people are so stupid. Do we have it or no? Can we do it on the computer here? Let me see. Let's keep going. Let's go A6.
The MAGA effect is in full effect. Let me tell you why. We just saw the interview with Officer Race Tatum and now the four boys, which is insane. So here, number one, here's how the MAGA effect works. They have to first become the victim and convince the whole world that they are the ones that are being victimized, right? Not so much. Now they're going to sue the world. They can't do a GoFundMe because that's not going to work. They have to do a Give, Send, Go because that's the only platform that will let people like this actually grift off their best friend's unaliving. It's them against the world. What do they think? They're Tupac? Not. They're no Pac. Now, they have that bogus-ass list of influencers and media and all these people trying to get justice for their best friend. They've raised $165K. That is not enough money by a long shot to sue like all 85 people they want to sue for defamation. By the way, you cannot sue for defamation until this process is completed and we actually know what happens to know if anybody is actually lying. Now, they go on the conservative Officer Race Tatum's podcast. They have TMZ now playing in their pocket, all MAGA-driven media, ABC, CBS. It is all about the optics that are being orchestrated, allegedly, by somebody else. We don't know. Now, they say there's no race involved. There's no race involved in Mississippi. This is like going to the Playboy Mansion with a bop and everybody says you're the one who dirtied the grotto water. Does anybody believe in that? It's you, Mississippi. Wow, we continue to see people hung, people killed in Mississippi. You're still playing in our faces like Mississippi doesn't have a disgusting history? Now, everybody is focused on Horn Island, and literally Nolan is being buried every single day over and over.
Their statements, their timelines, who was where, who saw Nolan last, what happened on the boats, and especially that Cito call. Every detail became something for people to debate. Then there were the attorneys. Why were some of Nolan's friends getting lawyers? Why were their families speaking publicly? Why were they raising money? For some people watching from the outside, those things looked suspicious. And once that suspicion took hold, it spread fast. Some people began claiming Nolan's friends knew more than they were saying. Others went even further, accusing them of being responsible for Nolan's death. But here's the line that cannot be crossed. Suspicion is not evidence of murder. You can question somebody's story. You can question their timeline. You can question what they told investigators. You can demand answers. But none of that gives anyone the right to threaten to kill them. And that's exactly why the Porter arrest matters. Because whatever you believe about Nolan's friends, the moment someone allegedly starts threatening their lives, their families, or the police investigating the case, this is no longer just an argument about what happened to Nolan. It's a criminal investigation of its own. And now the people who were already under a microscope are dealing with something much more serious. Because according to federal prosecutors, someone allegedly wanted them dead. And that brings us back to the piece of evidence that has fueled so much of the suspicion in the first place. The Cito recording.
I don't think they've cooperated at all. They do not have Nolan's phone. They haven't had access to Nolan's phone. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has it. So how can you say that there's text missing or there's photographs missing? Our boys had no reason to do anything with Nolan's phone other than give it back to Christine and her friends later that night. So anything about missing text messages or Snapchats is completely false.
And this is where we have to slow down for a second, because asking questions about Nolan's death is not the problem. You should question the timeline. You should question the statements. You should question what happened on those boats. You should ask why certain evidence has not been made public. You should ask why different people seem to have different versions of what happened. Those are fair questions. But there's a line. And once people cross from, I have questions, into I know who killed him, without evidence to support that claim, everything changes. Because the people being accused are real. Their parents are real. Their families are real. They have homes. They have lives. And if the accusation is wrong, the damage doesn't disappear just because someone later says, I was only speculating. That's what makes the allegations against Edward James Porter so serious. According to federal prosecutors, this wasn't simply someone arguing about Nolan online. They allege the threats became violent enough that federal investigators eventually showed up at his door. And now Porter is facing federal charges. But even with that arrest, we still have to separate two completely different things. The alleged threats against Nolan's friends are one investigation. What happened to Nolan is another. One does not automatically answer the other. And after everything that's happened, that's the point I keep coming back to. Because this story isn't really about who can yell the loudest online. It isn't about which commentator has the biggest audience. And it isn't about which theory gets the most views. It's about an 18-year-old named Nolan Wells. He went out on July 4th. He was with friends. He didn't come home. 2 days later, his body was found in the water. And weeks later, we're still asking what happened. Now, there has been a federal arrest. But it's important to understand what this arrest does, and what it doesn't do. This is not the arrest announcing that Nolan's killer has been found. Edward James Porter is facing allegations over threats directed at people connected to the investigation. That's serious. But it doesn't tell us who caused Nolan's death. It doesn't tell us whether Nolan was murdered. And it doesn't prove that the people who were with him that night were responsible. Those questions still need evidence. Real evidence. And until that evidence answers them, the theories are going to keep coming. The arguments are going to keep getting louder. And if this latest arrest tells us anything, it's that this case has already gone far beyond an internet debate. So if you're following Nolan Wells' story, don't follow the loudest voice. Don't follow the theory that makes you the angriest. Follow the evidence. Because underneath all the accusations, the arguments, the recordings, the attorneys, and now these federal charges, there is still one question that matters more than everything else. What happened to Nolan Wells? And until that question is answered, this story isn't over.